They sat in the mess hall, laughing. 5 fresh recruits, not one older than 50 cycles, uniform scales polished and pristine, tossing around stories they'd half heard from training vids and propaganda streams. Humans? Bah. Dirt worlders with knives and fire, one chuckled, curling his mandibles in amusement. Throw a neuro grenade and you wipe out a village. I heard they still use bullets. Metal slugs, another said, to general snorts and tail slaps on the benches. None of them noticed the old one in the corner, half his face replaced by synth steel, one arm always twitching like it couldn't forget. He stirred his protein ration but didn't eat, just listened, until one recruit asked too loudly, "Why did the Threxian front lose 12 battalions then? They outnumbered the humans 50-1. That was when he spoke. "Younglings," the old vet said, not looking up. "You think you're ready, you're not." The laughter faded. He stood, limping toward their table, the metal in his leg grinding softly with every step. When he reached them, he tapped the comlink behind his ear. A hologram flickered to life, fuzzy, low-res, yellowed with age. A Terran jungle, dense, silent. The image pulsed, then cracked into static as something fast moved across the feed. "That's all we got," he said. "That was the last recon drone that came back from Earth intact." He lowered himself slowly, painfully, into a seat across from them. "You've been told they were primitive, that they wore cloth and bark and hid in caves, that they didn't even have starflight." He looked each of them in the eyes. "You've been lied to." He started from the beginning. "We dropped onto their world thinking it would be cleanup duty. Sweep a few cities, subdue resistance. Maybe build a forward base, nothing serious, just another backwater rock with delusions of sovereignty." He paused. "It rained the moment we landed, not water, acid leaves. Something in the local trees' chemical defense. Burned the armor off 3 scouts before they hit the ground." One of the recruits leaned forward. "So, you were ambushed." The old one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, that came later. First we walked." They'd landed in what their maps called Zone 4A, a forest by all scans, slightly denser than expected. No urban centers, no weapons caches, no heat signatures, just quiet, too quiet. "You know how they win wars?" the old vet asked. "They listen, they wait, and then they bleed you without ever stepping into your range." They marched for 10 kilometers without seeing a soul. Then came the first trap. A simple vine woven through the underbrush, tensioned across a fallen log. It looked like nothing, until one of them tripped it. The forest exploded, not with plasma, not with tech, with splinters. Sharp wooden darts laced with paralytic compounds. Not one of us died in that blast, but none of us walked the same after. They radioed for evac. No response. Their comms were jammed. Someone or something was mimicking their signal tones, feeding them static with just enough delay to seem like real-time response. They didn't realize it for 2 days. By then, they were already in the maze. The vet shook his head. "We tried burning the trees. The fire didn't spread. They'd prepared the terrain, moisture pockets, fungus layers, cooling mists. They turned their planet against us. You think they're primitive, but they made us primitive, stripped our tech, cracked our maps, forced us to fight with knives and fists in the dark." Day 3. They found the first corpse, not one of theirs, a human, young, maybe female, lying on her back with eyes open, no visible wounds. Until they rolled her over. Her entire spine had been removed, still warm, no footprints. "She was bait," the vet said. "They'd learned our psychology, our panic reflex. And while we were recovering the body," he tapped his chest, "3 of them hit us from below." The humans didn't speak, didn't shout or taunt. They moved like mist, appeared, disappeared. Sometimes they'd find their own patrol signs etched into trees but mirrored. Wrong, false trails, ghost signals. One morning their field medic woke up screaming. His eyes had been surgically removed. No one heard a thing. The vet leaned back. The recruits weren't laughing now. One looked pale. Another had stopped chewing. The old soldier nodded at them. They used to say the galaxy feared the Zarn assassins, or the Vrel hivecutters, or the Helix wraiths. But none of them live in your head after they're gone. The humans don't just kill, they unmake. He looked up at the flickering feed again. It was still showing static, just faint jungle sounds now. He pointed at the screen. We dropped thinking we were the hunters, but by nightfall we weren't even prey. He paused. We were the test subjects. We lost the first fire team in the jungle, the second. They were inside a city when they vanished. The old vet paused, but we never found the city. The recruits sat frozen, food untouched. The mess hall had gone quiet. Even nearby tables leaned in now, unblinking. They didn't use orbital defense weapons. No mass accelerators. No fleet interception grids. We were trained for that, the vet said. Instead, they let us in. He leaned forward, mechanical fingers tapping slowly on the plastisteel table. They knew terrain better than the scanners, used the shadows better than our optics. They'd mapped our patrols before we'd even landed. He described the forest again. Day 4. Mist so thick you couldn't see your own weapon. Click, click, click. The sound of something tapping against their helmets like rain, but it wasn't rain. It was gravel, human-made, tossed upward, just enough to make them look up. Then the ground opened. Half the squad fell into a pre-cut trench, 2 meters deep. Thin bamboo spears lined the bottom, dipped in something that turned their blood black in seconds. Primitive, the vet said quietly. They used gravity, silence, and chemistry better than our biotech divisions. They called for evac, again, still nothing. The noise interference had changed. It wasn't static anymore, it was speech. Garbled at first, then familiar, their own voices, clipped and edited from past broadcasts, twisted together into mockery. We are the masters of the stars. Nothing on Earth can stop us. This is a cleanup op. Over and over, a loop of hubris shoved back in their faces. One by one, soldiers began pulling out their implants, some by hand. On the 5th night it rained again. Only this time the rain didn't fall, it rose. A fine mist creeping from the forest floor, warm, unnatural, bioluminescent. They tried using thermals, didn't help. The mist was warmer than the bodies, perfect camouflage. That's when the stories began, whispers among the survivors, claims of a child seen watching them from the trees, just standing, unblinking, sometimes smiling, sometimes pointing. One soldier said he heard music, a slow piano melody playing faintly through the trees. A few hours later, he walked into a vine trap so precisely placed it split his body in half. The vet clenched his metal hand. We thought we were fighting a fractured species. We didn't realize the fracture was the illusion. Every strike was coordinated, every ambush linked. They weren't individuals. They were a system. They found a bunker, half buried in vines and rock, clearly Terran. They broke inside, empty. Just a wall covered in numbers, dates, coordinates, incident logs, theirs, from their own command network. Everything they thought was secure, every movement, every supply drop, every password was there. They'd been watching us long before we dropped. They didn't just predict us. They studied us, like prey, like a lab experiment. Then they found the message etched into the concrete, a language none of them recognized. One of the linguists on the squad translated it days later. You thought you were alone in the dark, but we are the dark. Day 7, they stopped marching. No one gave the order, they just stopped. All their maps were wrong. The terrain shifted under their feet, rivers where there were none before, cliffs that didn't match aerial scans, forests that seemed to move during sleep rotations. One trooper fired at a shadow and hit a mirror, in the middle of the jungle. The reflection, himself, but smiling. They weren't hallucinating, or maybe they were. We started questioning each other, who had slept last, who was real, who was turned. They found Corporal Jex laying stones in a spiral, just stones, quietly humming. No helmet, no comms, no memory. Said he was making a landing zone for his new friends. They had to put him down. Then came the day the sky changed. Literally. Stars rearranged. Someone, something, hacked their navigation systems, their HUDs, and the very stars they trusted. They couldn't tell up from down. And still not a single Terran soldier had been captured. Not one, just traps, whispers, psychological collapse. You want to know the worst part? the vet asked, voice low now. He leaned close. They didn't even need weapons. They used our minds as the battlefield. He looked at the youngest recruit. They weren't fighting us. They were undoing us. The last thing they ever told us, the veteran began, his voice low and flat, was that reinforcement fleets were 5 hours out. He gave a bitter smile. They never made it. By day 9, the jungle wasn't the enemy anymore. It was themselves. They didn't even speak standard anymore, not to each other. Language began to unravel under stress. Orders went ignored. Paranoia took root. The veteran recounted how Captain Vorlin slit his own second-in-command's throat because he thought he was mimicking a human smile. There was no smile, just exhaustion. They buried him under twisted roots that somehow weren't there the next morning. We stopped following maps, the vet said. We started following instinct. That's when the hallucinations began, or what they thought were hallucinations. One scout, Delrix, reported seeing the same child from earlier, standing knee-deep in a stream, singing. Delrix swore the words weren't alien or human. They were something older. When they reached him, Delrix was face down in the water, lungs filled with crushed bone powder. There were no footprints. They tried to make a stand. A fallback zone was marked, high ground with decent visibility. 15 troops huddled inside a half-circle of scorched ground. They lit fires, set motion alarms, powered up defense turrets. Then the fires went out, one by one, snuffed like candles. A shape passed through the flames, tall, lean, almost skeletal in outline. They opened fire. The projectiles passed through nothing. Seconds later, one of the turrets exploded internally. The squad medic started laughing so hard he dropped his weapon. They're inside, he said. They've always been inside. He wasn't talking about the perimeter. They weren't killing to win, the vet said. They were breaking us down, dismantling the idea of control. The human war doctrine wasn't just about territory or tactics. It was about entropy. They introduced doubt, uncertainty, guilt. They left behind messages carved into trees in the soldiers' native tongue, containing personal information that couldn't have been known. One said, "Your hatchmate didn't die in training. You left him behind." Another, "Your mate lies. She already chose someone else." Those soldiers were never the same. They didn't fight as an army, they fought as a conscience. By day 12, only 5 of them remained, starving, sleep-deprived, surrounded. One heard her own voice, her childhood voice echoed in the woods, calling her to come home. She ran into the trees. They found her helmet hours later, filled with flower petals. No blood, no body. Then the rain came again. But it wasn't water this time, it was ash, black, clinging and silent. We'd been circling the same kilometer for 3 days. No escape, no direction, no hope. Then they saw it. A landing beacon. A signal flare in human color code. Green for safe. 2 of the survivors sprinted toward it. The vet stayed back. He didn't trust it. They didn't come back. Just silence. Then a soft humming sound like a lullaby through static. Later they found the source. The beacon was real. It was mounted atop a pile of helmets. Alien helmets, each one scorched inside. Every visor cracked in the same perfect pattern, a single human fist. The vet closed his eyes. We didn't run, we crawled. Through mud and leaves and bone. They made it to the original drop zone. Empty. Not a scorch mark, not a shell, like the land had healed. But there in the center was a message burned into the soil. This was your test. You failed. Then the sky lit up. Reinforcements had finally arrived. Capital-class destroyers, carriers, escort frigates, their glory, their salvation, their doom. The humans had waited for the reinforcements, had wanted them. Because as soon as the fleet entered low orbit, everything turned red. The vet's voice went hoarse. We saw them. The Terran stealth fleet, ships shaped like wounds and shadows, cloaked, silent, predatory. They hadn't launched a single missile. They hadn't fired a shot. They had marked every Threxian ship with reflectors weeks ago. The fleet didn't even know it was being tracked by its own shadows. Then came the drones. Surgical, silent, not explosive. They disabled, disarmed, shut down entire warships by cutting the power feeds to life support first. By the time Command realized what was happening, the humans had walked out of the forest, clean, calm, untouched, and watched, just watched, as the sky choked with the smoke of the Empire's pride. You don't understand, the veteran said, leaning forward, shaking slightly. They let us live. They wanted survivors. Because stories are more effective than bombs. He looked each recruit dead in the eyes. You think they're primitive. They let us come. They watched us struggle. Then they burned our reinforcements in front of us without firing a weapon. He said the last 3 words through clenched teeth. We broke first. The mess hall was silent now, not just quiet, hushed. Every table, every ear, every set of alien eyes was focused on the old war veteran. He didn't need volume anymore, just truth. After the sky burned and the last ship died, the humans walked into our base, he said. No armor, no guns, just presence. He rubbed his ruined arm absently. They didn't threaten us. They didn't kill us. They stood there in the mud and smoke and asked a question. The recruit furthest back finally spoke. What question? The vet's jaw tightened. They asked, do you understand now? That moment haunted him more than the blood. Because he did understand. Not just the tactics, not just the silence or shadows or ashfall. He understood what humanity really was. You see, you thought they were a primitive species, he said, staring straight ahead. But that was the illusion. He gestured to the ceiling, to the stars beyond it. They were never behind. They chose to look like they were. They pretended. He leaned forward, voice cold as vacuum. Because we ignore what we don't fear. He explained the signs, retrospective now, but obvious. Old Earth signals in the deep voids of space. Random bursts, ancient codes. The assumption was static junk, but it wasn't. It was data compression tech centuries ahead of the Empire. Humanity had never stopped advancing. They just stopped advertising. You want to know the real horror? They don't build fleets to show strength. They don't parade weapons. They don't issue ultimatums. Because humans don't see war as a game. They see it as a test. The vet listed the others who survived. 4 from his unit. 6 from the Valerian drop. 2 from the high-orbit bombardment corps. They all said the same thing. Humans study. Then they wait. Then they design your extinction. He pulled a chip from his pocket, worn, scorched, still active. This is a memory core salvaged from a Terran field unit, he said. No encryption, wide open, like they wanted us to find it. The contents, not tactical data, not troop positions, but cultural records, books, stories, war diaries. One entry was underlined repeatedly. A human general's quote, "Victory isn't when your enemy surrenders. It's when they remember your name and refuse to fight your kind ever again." They weren't fighting us, the vet said, voice shaking now. They were teaching us. The young recruits were pale, motionless. One had tears forming under his lower lid membrane. The veteran didn't stop. We lost because we brought conquest. They responded with calculation. We declared ourselves gods. They showed us what happens to gods who bleed. Someone whispered at the back, "Why didn't they finish us?" The vet smiled for the first time genuinely. Because they didn't need to. We left that world on our knees. The galaxy watched us crawl away. And from that day forward, no one tried again. He pointed at the hall's massive display screen showing known species threat tiers. Humans were still listed in the developing column. The vet scoffed. They let that list stand. Because the moment we admit the truth, we admit we're prey. Then he stood, wobbly, heavy. The recruits, in silence, cleared a path for him. He paused at the doorway, turned back one last time. You want to fight them, go ahead. But when the shadows start moving, when the stars change position, when your own voice comes back to you in the dark, know this. It's already too late. The mess hall stayed silent long after he left. Eventually, someone turned the display off, and someone else updated the threat tier. Humans moved from developing to unknown, do not engage. No one objected.